Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the podcast. I'm your host, Ajoe21love, here to bring you sports overview topics, episode number 25, part 1. Today, I'll be going over the games for week 13, Sunday edition. And tomorrow, I'll be going over on part 2, I'll be going over the Wednesday games and the Thursday game, which go on today, between the Baltimore Ravens and Dallas Cowboys. But before I get into, first of all, thank you for tuning to the video, like and subscribe, clicking that bell. If you haven't clicked on seeing my videos, previously, my last video, I went over AEW Dynamite Winter is Coming on Thursday. So check out my AEW Dynamite reviews, pro wrestling reviews, as well as my sports predictions and reviews as well. But before I get into the games from Sunday, there was some MLB news out there. So the Angels, who have the best player in the world, Mike Trout, trying to supply him with some weapons or some supporting cast around him as a team. They signed Rafael Iglesias and Jose Iglesias, two guys, both solid pitchers, trying to do what they can to surround Mike Trout with supporting cast. Hopefully, they are better than what they were in the condensed season this year, next year. So we'll see. As well as the Kansas City Royals, who had a disappointing season as well in the bubble. They signed Carlos Santana, who was an all-pro level last year. This year in the bubble was an okay season. So we'll see how they go. The Royals, who last won their World Series in 2015, hopefully get back to the playoffs. Of course, we'll see based on next season. So now with that, going over a little bit of MLB news. So now we'll get into Sunday's games as part of Week 13. Was a pretty good Sunday edition of football, to say the least. Some surprising outcomes, some thrilling finishes. We'll start with probably the best and most exciting, as far as Browns fans are concerned, Cleveland. Boy, the Browns, they beat up the Titans 41-35. Now, going into this, both teams were 8-3. You were curious how both teams were going to respond. Cleveland, they were 7-0 against teams under 500. Against teams over 500, they're going into this game. They were 1-3. Their only win was against the Colts. This game, you were curious because the Titans don't really have a good pass rush. Nonetheless, they are both kind of a physical team. Uh, but it was two errors on offense for the Titans that really kicked into gear for the Browns, and the Browns just didn't lay it up. It was a fourth down call by the Titans going for it, stopped short in their part of the field, which set up a touchdown. And then Derrick Henry fumble, uh, which was inside the red zone, that led to another touchdown. So, two errors by the Titans early in the game, which jump started obviously the Browns, and they just didn't look back. The Browns, Baker Mayfield had himself a day, 20 for 25 in the first half, 4 touchdowns. It was 38-7. You know, the Titans did what they could in the second half to come back, but was a pick that ricocheted off a Titans receiver into the Browns when they were driving down. And, I mean, this was more of a saving for the Browns because it showed that they are for real. And when they get into the playoffs, they are a threat to anybody. They'll be a tough outing for anybody. The Titans, they are still a good team. And they almost came back and won it. Excuse me. But two critical errors, like I said, in the early part of the game, which opened the door for the Browns. You know Mike Vrabel is going to be kicking himself about that, and I expect them to be back, and we'll see how it all goes. But good win for the Browns and Browns fans, clinching their first winning season since 2007. Now, that was a stacked team in 2007 that went 10-6. But this team overall is a much more loaded team than the one back then. Let's see, next. So we go from that game to the Raiders beating the Jets in a last-second hurrah Hail Mary throw by Derek Carr on fourth down, or it might have been third down. Either way, Henry Ruggs throwing up single coverage with a few seconds left, and the Raiders won. I mean, no Josh Jacobs, still dealing with his ankle injury. Devontae Booker and the running backs of the Raiders did a formidable job, but it was mostly, as far as the offense goes, about Darren Waller. He had a very good day. The Jets, they did a good job across the board. Sam Darnold made a couple throws, or made some good throws. The Jets held tight, even though they were down later in the game. But the Jets made you think that they were gonna get their first win on the season, and thus that did not happen. Thanks to Greg Williams calling a zero blitz, which allowed the Raiders to win and allowed him to get set free from that Jets organization. And I mean, they'll be talking. I mean, of course, people will be talking about how it was probably the worst decision in the league. Might not have been, in the sense that the Jets are a bad environment right now, and now that Greg Williams can get himself out of that environment, and because he's probably going to get another defense coordinator job somewhere. So it's going to be very interesting. But the story about this, while it's conflicting for the Jets, hey, you're still taking and you're still probably going to get Trevor Lawrence next year's draft. So, yes, you lost, but so good for Raiders as well. They stay 7-5. They're still one game out of the playoff picture, but they play the Colts next week, and that may very well be for a playoff spot next week. I'll talk about it more tomorrow when I do my predictions for Week 14, but so good for the Raiders. It keeps them in the hunt, because if they fall at 6-6, especially since they lost to the Patriots, that would not be a good feeling if you're the Raiders. We also got some overtime on Sunday in Week 13. The Jaguars and the Vikings. I mean, the Vikings, this was a odd game. Really odd game. In the sense that the Vikings are still playing for something. They are still in the hunt for the playoffs. And after Sunday, they're now the 7th seed in the playoffs. But, I mean, the Jags, it was Mike Glennon, and they are 1-10, now 1-11. But this is what worries you if you're a Vikings fan and you're going into and if you go into the playoffs, because Aaron Rodgers, the Saints, the Rams, the Seahawks. I mean, that secondary is the Achilles heel of the Vikings, and as they showed with even Mike Glenn, who did a good job against the inexperienced secondary of the Vikings. How you cannot trust them against any one of those teams. It's just worrisome. So, something to think about, but nonetheless, good for the Vikings. Of course, they got the win in overtime. James Robinson, um, the best player right now for the Vikings. Boy, did they find themselves a gem in him at the running back position to replace Leonard Fournette. Um, it's kind of weird, though, to talk about this game because, I mean, it was back and forth. Kirk Cousins had himself a good day as well. Um, that defense, though, is just what's going to, especially if you're a Jags fan, because while this game was going on, the Jets game was going on. So you were kind of tormented because if the Jets were to win and and the Jags were doing good, but you were kind of conflicted because, if they were a tie, then you have a better chance of getting Lawrence and, say, Fields. But nonetheless, uh, the Vikings did what they needed to do, and they're in the playoffs currently. Playoff seeding Jags, they're still fighting. I will say that. I mean, Dave Caldwell, he was fired. Um, Doug Marrone may be fired as well at the end of the season, but I think they have a bright future if you're a Jags fan, because they have a bunch of young talent on their roster that I think if you're a head coach or a GM, it would be very appealing. Probably not as a few jobs, but it would definitely appeal to some GMs or head coaches out there. Then next, it was an ugly game between the Dolphins and the Bengals, 19-7. I mean, the Dolphins have a very good defense and special teams. Tua, he did what he needed to do. He had over 200 yards passing. But I think when you look at the two cheap shots by Mike Brown uh, on punt returns, that's probably the sour taste in people's mouths when they talk about this game. I mean, the Dolphins did what they needed to do. Bengals, I mean, at this point, without Joe Burrow, lose as much as you can. Get that draft pick as high as you can get it. So that way you can supply the team with more stock. Um, whether it's more offensive linemen or a really good player in the draft. Um, whatever you got to do. But the Bengals are doing it. And the Dolphins, I mean, 8-4, very interesting. I give them a slight edge over Buffalo right now, but it's going to be very intriguing. Week 17, Dolphins at Buffalo. uh, possibly for the AFC's crown. And what a finish this was. Just crazy. As well. 24-20 Colts over Texans. This was also back and forth kind of game. Colts, Philip Rivers did what he needed to. Jonathan Taylor's back. He had a touchdown. Nakeem Hines did a good job as well. Deshaun Watson did what he could. The Texans held them in it. It was a curious situation by Frank Wright and the offense when they were down late and deep in Texan territory, not to kick it and go for it on fourth down, which in theory would have made it a touchdown game, but I guess they were trying to go for a win. Instead, they get stopped, and Texans have an opportunity to win it with a touchdown. They were inside the 5, and a bad snap from Nick Martin, the center, to Deshaun Watson winds up in a fumble. The Colts recover. J.G. Watt's face told it all. I mean, just Texans losing in a horrid fashion. Not much you can say, but I feel for you Texans fans. Colts, however, win. They advance, going 8-4. Still keep the division hopes alive. And next week they face, like I said, the Raiders in a crucial matchup as far as playoff hopes are concerned. And another interesting finish happened. Detroit in Chicago. The Lions, first game with Darrell Bevell as the offense coordinator, or excuse me, as the head coach, the interim head coach. All three interim coaches are undefeated in their first starts of the season. I mean, Trubisky did well for the Bears. 26 for 34, over 200 yards passing. He had himself a good day. The Bears seemed in control of this game, but the Lions stayed in it, forced a turnover on Trubisky, which set up a touchdown by Adrian Peterson. 2 touchdowns by Adrian Peterson. DeAndre Swift wasn't there. Adrian Peterson still racks up yards, and he's still racking up those touchdowns. Good win for the Lions. Now both teams are 5-7, and man, is it interesting. The Detroit Lions, it's interesting. They're 5-7 and only one game out of the playoff hunt. So interesting. See how they go from here. Next up, the Saints go to Atlanta. Part 2, Taysom Hill versus the Falcons. his third start was a solid one. Uh, Again, he did what he needed to do. 21-16, much better than it was last week in Denver. But the Saints did what they needed to do, and more importantly, I think their defense once again stacked up. 16 points allowed. Their defense has just been really good as of late. The Saints defense, that's kind of what they need going into the playoffs. Whether it's Taysom Hill or Drew Brees or both in the playoffs, as that defense getting better, it's kind of getting better at the right time as far as the Saints go. You know, the Saints offense did what they needed to do, and Taysom Hill is getting more and more confident. Now, Drew Brees, he's gonna be eligible to be activated off of IR this week, but next week they face the Eagles. The following week they face the Chiefs. I think not this week, but next week, Drew Brees will be activated because the Eagles will be starting Jalen Hurts. Probably the better idea is to wait till next week. But good for the Saints and good for Taysom Hill. Next up, boy, I had a feeling about this game. I had a feeling, but I just couldn't pull the trigger. You know, the Giants went to Seattle, and that defense of the Giants is legit. Is legit. They just shut down the offense of the Seahawks. Just man, 17-12 with Colt McCoy and Joe Judge has established a culture in New York, and they are starting to impose their way. Wayne Gallman, he had over 100 yards rushing. Had himself a day. Alfred Morris had 2 touchdowns. Man, their offensive line, people were picking on it early in the year, but they have gotten more comfortable and more in sync with each other, and they are just finding their way. And they moved to 5-7. Still in first place of the NFC East. They have a tough road left on their schedule with the Cardinals, the Browns, the Ravens, and the Cowboys. But they can very well go run the table. And if they run the table because they swept Washington, they're the NFC East champs. Simple. And I would not want to play them in the playoffs if I were any team. As far as the Seahawks go, they had that great start to the season. The narrative was let Russ cook. And then after a while, it kind of dimmed down. Um, he started turning the ball over. They tried to get a more balance on offense. It's just, I don't know with the Seahawks. I mean, because at least two teams in the NFC East will make the playoffs, but it's a thought that perhaps we'll see. I mean, the Rams, like I said, are the most balanced team in that division. Um, if only one team represents the West, I will be gently surprised. Because, I mean, the Cardinals are trailing. The 49ers, you don't know about. I mean, anything could happen in the NFC, but I just don't know about the Seahawks. I still think they're a playoff team, but that aura and mystique that they had in September, early October is gone, which is strange. Next up, the Rams went to Arizona and won 38-28. You were curious how this one was going to unfold. The Rams were 7-4. Cardinals are 6-5. How would both respond after adversity they suffered last week? The Rams, I mean, first of all, it looked like the Cardinals were going to come out to play and control the game. And with an early touchdown to Dan Arnold, it looked to be that way. But over time, the Rams just controlled the clock. And the Cardinals just couldn't get on the field. The Rams controlled the clock. Jared Goff, after being called out by Sean McVay, did what he needed to, had a much better game. And the Rams did what they needed to do. The Cardinals are now 6-6. 3-game losing streak after the Hail Murray. I don't know. It's just, I'm curious. I don't think Kyler Murray is 100%. I mean, he only had around 50% of his passes completed. He's not running as much as he did early in the year. It's clear to me that plus that zip on the ball that used to be there is not there. I just don't think Kyler Murray is 100%. And I still think they're a good football team. It's just, man, it's just weird with them. Now, they get Larry Fitzgerald back off of COVID. That's another piece of their offense that they could use. And hopefully he gives them a little bit more juice that they need in the offense. But man, the Cardinals now 6-6. They are right outside the playoff picture, and they need to get their act together if they still have aspirations for the postseason. Next up, you talk about aspirations for the postseason. Well, the Patriots are still in it. They are still in it. Once again, laid a donut on the Los Angeles Chargers. I almost said San Diego, but Los Angeles Chargers. 45-0. Now, it wasn't a pretty 45-0, but the Patriots, they controlled the clock. They ran the ball well. Cam Newton, he didn't have a great throwing day, but when it came to running the ball, he showed up. And the special team showed up as well. While the Chargers' woes have continued. A punt return touchdown and a blocked field goal for a touchdown, both on special teams for the Patriots, which, in a sense, just proved the woes of the Chargers. I don't see how Anthony Lynn keeps his job, or is the head coach of the Chargers in 2021. I mean, I respect Anthony Lynn. His first 2 years with the Chargers were really good. The last 2 seasons for the Chargers now, the first 2 years they were able to win those close scoring games. But now they have struggled, and with Justin Herbert, you need to do better. And Chargers have not done that. So then we go from that shutout to a interesting game in the cold. Green Bay hosted Philly and won 30-16. Now this game got a little dicey at the end. Jalen Hurts, it was 23 to 3 late in the game. Then next thing you know, Jalen Hurts throws a touchdown to Greg Ward, I believe. Yeah, Greg Ward. And next thing you know, it's a 2-score game. And then Jalen Reagor, this reminded me of the Deshaun Jackson punt return and the Miracle at the Meadowlands 2 in 2010 against the Giants that won the game and sparked and culminated that huge comeback by the Eagles. But because he dropped it and ran it all the way back for the touchdown, then next thing you know, it's 23-16, and then It's one score game, but what a run by Aaron Jones. What a run. Where it looked like he was going out of bounds twice, but he didn't. And, credit to the blocking, but also credit Aaron Jones not stepping out of bounds. And just, man, Aaron Rodgers had himself another good day. Packers are rolling, and this was the game they were supposed to win, basically, although it got dicey at the end. Then what was a pretty entertaining game on Sunday night. The Chiefs hosted the Broncos and got out there with a win, although it seemed like they were flat to start. 22-16. The Broncos, they held in there, and their offense did well for most of the game. Drew Lock, though, 2 turnovers, 2 interceptions. Now, starting the game, Drew Lock threw a good pass to Noah Fant. And then a couple plays after that, he threw a interception to Honey Badger. And what was a drive they should have gotten points on after that, but they didn't. Then at the end of the half, when the Broncos were ahead 10-6, they missed the field goal. They mismanaged it, and instead of being ahead 13-6 or 2 scores, it's 10-9 at the half. And the Broncos still did what they needed to do. They scored a touchdown to go up ahead. But the Chiefs kept fighting, even though it looked like they were slow. But the Chiefs still were in it. And Drew Lock, he had a chance late in the game to tie it up or win it, and he just didn't do it. I mean, I like Drew Lock, but the talent is there. But I think kind of the same thing with Carson Wentz is he tries to do too much. And I think the Broncos still have, I think he can be their franchise quarterback. I just think he needs to fix some things and hold it down. But nonetheless, a pretty good game and a solid day of picks for me. I was 10-2 on Sunday. Solid day. I have to look back at the Monday games from yesterday, as well as tonight's game, to tally up my whole record for Week 13. But so far, so good. So that was the episode right now for you guys. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I know I did. I'll see you all back tomorrow with part 2. Going over the rest of the games for Week 13. That was my Week 14 predictions. So with that, thank you all. Like and subscribe. And I'll see y'all tomorrow for part 2.